We good?
QA.
Yeah? You lost one of your cameramen. Scotty died. Austin Gill, welcome to that podcast.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for coming here, speaking the whole nine. I appreciate you. I mean, we've had many conversations with you. You were willing to try to change some stuff around and just make it work, which I just really appreciate.
No, I feel honored and blessed to be able to make it, so I'm really grateful that you extended the opportunity to me.
Absolutely. So I want to ask you, you did a workshop on forms, and I don't want to take this down a technical path, if you will. I really want to kind of go around because kind of meander around it because half the internet is forms. So, and I feel like I do them wrong all the time. And then you submitted a workshop on, I want to really dive into forms. Are you crazy? Like,
Yeah, it's kind of weird.
what Kool-Aid do you drink?
I think people in the tech industry are generally considered nerds, and I think part of that is we have a tendency to hyper focus on one thing and just get really excited about it. And for me, I don't know why. It's been web development, but then as a subset of that, I've had a lot of focus on forms because kind of the challenging thing about it is they seem fundamentally easy. You have a form tag.
Seems easy on the outside.
Yeah,
Yes.
you have a form tag. In some cases, you don't even have that. You just have the input tag.
Yep.
But then as you learn more about it, it's fascinating because there's so many things you can do wrong or so many things you can do better to improve them.
Sure.
That it's very nuanced. And the workshop was fun and interesting because we had a lot of people on more of the beginner end of the spectrum. And that really lets you dive into topics around accessibility and semantics, and then just sort of what you could consider the fundamentals before you even get into adding the superpowers is hours of conversation.
Yeah.
You know, so
Yeah, I mean, obviously that conference or that.us has a whole litany of forms. You submitted a session through a form.
Yeah.
Which turns out to be is probably the most complicated form thing I've ever put together because it, depending on what you're submitting on the back end, there's a lot of pulling in and out of certain elements to create, what is a workshop versus a this, and how does that form get built. And I'm sure I'm doing a lot of things wrong, but the data seems to make it in a database okay. So
yeah, that's also part of I don't want to say part of the problem, but
oh, you could tell me it sucks and it's a problem.
Well, it's one of the issues is that it's also very easy to get to a point where it's functioning and does what you need it to do to get the data to the database. And then once you've done that, it's like, okay, cool, the form's done, let's move on. But
what are you saying?
Yeah, but I'm not saying
No, I didn't.
But
I'm
in
just,
general,
yes.
forms are all over, and
they are really
as you
all
know
over.
what to look for, you see time and time again. Most of them are done. Most of them leave room for improvement. So yeah, I just want to educate people because I'm interested and fascinated, and there's these nuances, and you can go really deep on just this one little way to make, use JavaScript to make it better, or don't use JavaScript because you fall back to HTML fundamentals.
Yep.
And I guess one thing I like about it is there's a lot of things in forms that are just actually this is the right way to do it, where 95% of the answers to the questions to web
need context.
It depends.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I like them.
So what do you see as things that are commonly done wrong?
I mean, accessibility is always one of the first things you go to.
For sure, yeah.
It's hard because you want everyone to build things in a way that is inclusive for everyone.
Yep.
But at the same time, you can't expect everyone to be an accessibility expert.
Yep.
And so, for example, there's the concept of implicit versus explicit labels, and that's where you have an ID on the input, or you just wrap it with a label tag.
Yep.
And I don't know. I mean, Homer probably over there in the audience, he'd probably be able to tell you. But besides that, the fact that implicit labels don't work for voice control interfaces.
Yep.
who's building for voice control interfaces,
Yep.
and that might be
Yep.
a reasonable answer for your application, but at the same time, if it's easy enough to just add an ID and do it, I don't
Then
know.
why aren't we doing it? Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a bit of give and take. I don't want people to have to be experts, but if you can say, hey, just build it this way, and especially in the world where we have componentized frameworks
Yeah.
that you can wrap all of the best practices into one place and then hand that to your team and know that they kind of can't mess it up, or they have to at least work really hard to mess it up, then yeah, it's just education,
You know what they say about reuse, right?
What's that?
It's only good if you're reusing my shit.
Yeah, exactly.
So you submitted through ours.
Mhm.
What was your initial thought about the experience?
Of submitting on the form or that conference or the website?
Submitting an abstract.
Oh, I mean,
Since that's our most complicated thing, I'm just curious what you thought about it.
Yeah, it was good. I think that that goes into. It's kind of interesting because different conferences ask for different things. Some
Yep.
are very, I just need a title and a description,
Yep.
and that's it. And I think that was very thoughtful in some of the things that you ask for and the things that you present. Because one, if I write so many
Yeah.
conference
Yeah.
talk abstracts that are not already prepared.
Yeah.
You write the title and the description before you have the slides.
Yep.
And then by the time you prepare the slides, then you say, oh, shoot, I actually have to modify
Sure.
the original idea. And I like that with that, you have an ability to make changes. I can log in and make changes
Yep.
to my thing,
Yep.
and it shows up on the website right away.
Yep.
And as simple as that may sound, so many other conferences establish their speaker decks and advertising and branding and Twitter announcements all based on the original thing you submitted. So that's kind of hard. I also like that that conference considers things like separating out prerequisites or having an explicit place for the
Yep.
description and separating what do I expect people to have ready
Yeah.
to come up to
Yeah.
show up for the workshop. I mean, I don't go into every single form and try and find what's wrong with it.
No,
and say,
I mean, it's a big piece of the experience, right?
Yeah.
It's a big piece of your interaction, and for us, obviously, it's a big piece of like, I can't scale us by dealing with 70, 80 change sets from people because they want a word changed, right? We've
Yeah.
got our machine running, and it needs to do what it needs to do well and push it out. So
yeah, it's also pretty smooth. And forms and discussions around making technical changes or accounting for things, you always have to account for what there's broad best practices, but then for every decision you have to make, it applies within the context of a subjective business, right? So your forms, for example, your form to accept an abstract is very different than your form to be contacted. The requirements are different because the
Yep.
audience is different.
correct.
So you have people that just need to be able to submit an abstract. You can make certain expectations or affordances for them
Yep.
and say, well, we know that maybe this doesn't follow the best practices of form building, but because it makes our end, our side easier to deal with from receiving that data, we're going to do that anyway.
Yeah.
I think the important part is having that be a conscious decision instead of an accidental decision.
Yeah. Yeah. I've spent not that the UI is quite where I would like it to be, but spent a lot of time in that UI UX piece of that experience to say, how is it the smoothest?
Yeah.
Right? How is it the least obtrusive? How does it move well or readable? It's amazing how, like in the profile, we try to make it easy for people to put their social stuff
Mm-hmm.
in, and it's amazing how many people interpret the input differently.
Yeah.
And we've changed it and we've tried it and we refactor, and it's been a fun little experiment of like, what are we doing wrong that, as not a large population, but some population sees this and then just
Yeah.
not right.
It's amazing how the simplest thing on the website that is just the most obvious, someone is going to take it and use it wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, I was like, I just wanted your Twitter handle, but you gave me the whole URL.
Yeah.
Like-
Well, see, that's one thing that you can do. Yeah, actually, I noticed that because I would like click on some people's, and it was clear that they didn't read the description. Because if you tell me the handle, I know that's
Well,
what you're asking for.
and we present
you have a
the
placeholder.
we
and-
present the first part of the handle next to it. So
Yeah.
it's, twitter.com, whatnot, and then the input
Yeah,
box
yeah.
is like, and handle.
yeah, yeah. And so, yeah, you would think that it's obvious, and some people, myself included, especially around documentation, don't necessarily read all
yeah,
of
totally.
it. But that's where you can still do things from a technical side and say, receive whatever the data is on the back end, parse it, and
Yeah.
see if it's a URL or
Yep.
see if it's a handle
Yep.
or follows
Yep.
a regex, and then
Oh, yeah.
make it easy, make it stupid simple for the user.
Yes, those are things.
But it's hard. That's also things that you have to balance as a business owner and say, do I want to put the technical man hours behind this thing that
Right.
really shouldn't be a thing,
Right.
or
just
do I
scrub the
want
data
to
and fix it.
or do I want to spend time marketing the brand or trying to make deals with
Yeah.
sponsors, and there's cost benefits
Yep.
there.
And that's how the backlog starts to
Yeah,
get built.
that's the reality of what we're dealing with. Is
Yep.
is if there were an infinite amount of hours in the day, we could do everything perfectly.
Yeah. Yes.
So
Amen to that.
yeah. So yeah, I try not to be too judgmental. I mean, I've been around the industry for like 9 years and made a whole lot of the mistakes and
Sure,
myself to know that stuff happens.
Yeah.
Life happens.
Yeah. What would, I don't want to say what advice, but like, how would you, somebody listening to this now and they've got forms or haven't really maybe been as intentional as they should be,
Mhm.
if you will. What like few pieces of advice would you give somebody to say, go pay attention to X, Y, and Z, and
Mm.
just to make a better form?
Subscribe to my newsletter.
There you go. All right.
No, to make a better form. I think in the workshop. Okay, the one of the fundamental lessons that we came back to with the workshop was the concept is kind of building forms for the web, or building like superpowered forms for the web, and part of that is you have to identify what is the superpower and what is an ordinary power. So those ordinary powers are things that the concept of it's built on HTML. HTML just works. So if you're using any sort of interface like a browser, or if you're using assistive technology to interface with it, HTML works and has been working forever. And we as developers have a tendency to, when things break, we think that something outside of ourselves caused it to break. But in fact, it might be CSS that we wrote, or it might be JavaScript that we wrote. So
Right. God forbid if it was
yeah.
something we wrote.
So this principle of progressive enhancement, it's not something new. It's not something I came up with. It's kind of coming back onto the scene.
Yeah, I have noticed that actually.
Yeah. So the concept is you build things in such a way that you have a minimum viable working product. And a lot of the discussion is around if JavaScript is available or if JavaScript is not, just because that's kind of JavaScript is eating up the world.
Yeah.
So that's the de facto comparison. You say, well, forms have worked. A form can submit an HTTP request. That's fundamentally what we're
Yep.
talking about. Submitting
Send
an
a payload.
HTTP. Yeah, submit an HTTP request, send data to a backend. HTML can do that with just forms. And if you want to do something fancy like submit data or make an HTTP request with JavaScript, you can do that with Fetch. And if you want to do it in a way that is sort of progressively enhanced, you build a form, you have JavaScript listen to the submit event handler, you grab the data off of the form, you grab the URL that it's supposed to submit to, you grab the method like
Yep.
get or post, and then you construct it that way, and then you submit it with JavaScript. And that way, if the user has spotty data, ad blockers that are breaking the script, if they're on an older browser that doesn't support your syntax, and for some reason the JavaScript
Blows
fails,
up.
when they hit that submit button, it still submits.
Yeah.
And they get the not so sexy interaction of the browser doing the reload. But that's the point, is progressive enhancement you can accomplish the same thing and maintain that feature parity and provide a better experience.
This may sound like a dumb question, but is the days of not having JavaScript in a browser still a thing?
That again, this is JavaScript
mean-
is kind of like the most commonly cited example.
Yeah.
It's not the only one.
Yeah.
But the best response I have is that the what was it? Gov.uk.
Yep.
They spend a lot of energy and resources on accessibility, and they do a lot of studies. And they provide a lot of information to people that are in the field around their use cases. And the data that I have now is a bit old, but I think it was like 5 years old. 5 years ago, they did a study on how much of their traffic or how much of their interactions were failing because of a lack of JavaScript.
Okay.
And they found that it was about 1.1%. And of that, only 0.2% were people that turned off JavaScript.
Okay.
So that's always the argument
Yeah.
against. It's like, well, you're like, this won't work without JavaScript, and people say, well, who turns off JavaScript? And if the user does, then that's kind of the onus is on them.
Yeah.
But if it's 1.1%,
Yeah, but 1% of 10
if you're
10 million or a billion people is a big chunk.
yeah, so
Big number.
Yeah, it depends. If you're a small company, 1.1% may not be that much. If you're a large company, 1.1% can be a lot. So
Yeah, and depending upon your user base.
yeah, and I also say that there are businesses that can dictate the environment that the user runs on,
Mm-hmm.
right? So
Yeah,
if
for
I'm
sure.
if I'm building a general website for the most general populace,
Population.
I probably want to support all the big browsers, maybe some older browsers, and this and that. I used to work for a company that had a certain sort of product that the only clients we had were users, like scientists, basically. They're only going to be on desktop devices, so I don't have to worry about mobile. And they're only going to be running on Chrome, or if you're doing something with like
Yeah.
an Electron app, you can actually ship the environment that you want.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it depends. But
There it is. It depends.
Yeah, the nice thing about it though is, I don't want to say it's not more work, because it kind of is. But the nice thing about building things in a progressive, enhanced way is, it's sort of like Pandora's box. Once I know that it exists, that JavaScript can fail and my application can break because I depended on it a certain
Yeah.
way, I can't unknow that information. And when I build things progressively enhanced, I sleep better at night.
Yeah.
It's just going to work. And I do have an anecdote where I went to a website, they had a service, I was interested, and I wanted to sign up. And I clicked the register button, and nothing happened. And I couldn't figure out what was going on. And as a web developer, I looked in the console and checked it out, and there was an error that Sentry was not defined. And that's because this group had built their application such that it relied, or it expected that Sentry, the error tracking and exception app service,
Yep.
was available. But I run ad blockers on my
Yep.
site, and so as a result, Sentry is being blocked, which
Yep.
means it's not available, which means all of their JavaScript didn't
Breadcrumbing or
work.
whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, and I couldn't sign up. So the number one thing, the most important thing on their website wasn't working. And if it was just built in a way that can fall back to HTML, that's going to work.
Right. Yep.
So-
I got a few of those problems on our website.
Hey, we all do, I mean, I'm do as I say, not as I do,
No, it's amazing especially when you have a small team and your platform gets bigger and bigger, and you make a change and you're like, shit, I got to get to these 3 other things too, and I don't have time today, and then tomorrow comes, and you're
Yeah.
like, still there,
Yeah.
it's on the backlog. Any last parting thoughts?
Well, yeah, I kind of wanted to talk to you about this conference, because this
Ask away,
or that conference or this conference.
please. Let's talk.
So this is a different format that I'm used to, where there's the keynote and then we kind of do breakout sessions. But then
Yep.
in between these breakout sessions, there's time and space for the open spaces.
Or during them. Yeah.
Yeah, we're during.
Yeah.
And that's the first time that I've done it, and I think that's really cool.
Is
Because
this your first open space?
This is my first open
Okay.
space. And some people call them unconferences,
Yep.
whatever.
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
create a space for people to self-govern and
Yep.
unite amongst shared things they want to talk
Yep.
about. Someone was learning how to play chess,
Yep.
and someone was doing meditation this
Yep.
morning.
Yep.
And that was really cool because as someone that attends a lot of conferences, there's a lot of things that at some conferences there's a lot of tracks that aren't necessarily relevant to
Totally.
either the stack that I'm working in
Totally.
or the most specific problem that I'm dealing with. Because you want something that's kind of general, and
Yep.
I'm at the point that my problems are very specific.
Sure.
So this was really cool because I got to organize a group of people yesterday to talk about edge compute, CDNs. What is
Yeah.
it? Some people came up and had specific questions about their stack, and we were able to talk through it. And a lot of the misconceptions about it. There's another guy here, Brian Rinaldi. He's
Oh yeah.
he's really into edge compute as well. So that was really cool. And I guess just wanted to talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I believe it's the special sauce. Not necessarily of that conference, but I've seen lives changed as a result of it. When you run a physical event, there's only so much you can do, right?
Mhm.
We have 6 rooms. That means 6 tracks. That means whatever, 24 speakers, right? I can't change any of that.
Mhm.
And we're fortunate enough, I guess, to where hundreds and hundreds of people submit. So, we picked, 80 speakers this time, but that means I had to say no to lots of other people. And I'm of the belief that everybody's a speaker and everybody has something to contribute.
Okay.
And contributing is both 2 ways. It's asking of questions and it's answering of questions.
Mhm.
And when I look at a keynote, I think this isn't time to inspire and recenter and just reflect on why we're here. When I look at a session like what's going on right now, this is a time where you're getting exposure to something, right? It's a very quick, very focused topic that hopefully, if done right, really should spill over to open spaces, right? It
Mhm.
shouldn't stop or it shouldn't end just because the presentation ended, right? And then, of course, workshops are this, hands down, multi-hour, long format type thing. And when I was first introduced, back when unconferences and bar camps and all that were much more popular than they are now, which is kind of funny that they kind of died. I haven't seen many of them like they used to be. I really gravitated to the open space because I like the conversation, right? I like to hear what other people have to say in a given format that doesn't have such a structure to it, because you will end up in places that you maybe didn't know you should have been in, right? Because you didn't know, right? If you don't know what questions to ask,
Yeah.
you may never land in that spot. And if we pick 80 sessions, guaranteed somebody's going to want something else, right? There's no way you can win on anything that's happening. So it's a really good way to add, hundreds of other things that can happen and build a discipline that you can use at your own company, at home, once you change your mindset around it. And of course, we're trying to take it online and just say, you really could do it whenever. Like, we'll just pull you in a video call and everybody chat about it. Like, you don't have to, you should be able to get that contextual help, if you will, when it's meaningful for you. So, obviously I'm biased, but it's a big piece of our DNA, and we've been doing it since the very first conference.
Yeah, the conferences are interesting because it wasn't until I attended enough that I realized that there's different flavors of them. You have the ones that are single track versus multi-track. You have a difference between huge conferences or very small conferences, and they all have their pros and cons. And my first experience to these open spaces is cool because, especially as someone as a speaker, I submit multiple talks.
Yep.
And I was fortunate to have one workshop that was selected.
Yep.
But as a result of having open spaces available to me as someone that is really excited about web development.
Yeah.
It's my hobby, it's my
Yeah.
passion, and I have a lot of things that I want to talk about, and I want to share that with a lot of people.
Yep.
It creates a space for me,
Yeah.
as well as me being able to attend things that I didn't know other people are passionate about.
Right. Yep.
So yeah, it's great. We're gonna do a
Got one
Linode-
coming up this.
Yeah, I want to help people get set up on their very first servers later today.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, I love it. I really hope what we're doing on that .us takes off, and I keep looking over this way because I'm trying to see how many people are doing circles.
Yeah.
It's a little different in Wisconsin. We have we don't have the tables. We just have round circles of chairs, so
Mhm.
it can collapse and expand to kind of a larger group. The tables tend to limit people.
Yeah, you can have like 8 or 10 max.
Yeah.
Yeah, but this community is cool. It definitely you see the conversations probably by design. You see the conversations go from the breakout sessions to the open spaces and then beyond to the fire pits and
Yep.
the barn and
Yeah, yeah.
and all that. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you ever been to a conference with a barn?
not a tech conference.
Yeah, I like that barn.
Yeah.
It's a fun place.
Yeah, that was great.
Um,
And the water parks. I got to go
Yeah,
race Brandon Bayer down a water slide.
yeah.
Like, that was awesome.
it's a pretty big water park. Did you have other questions about the conference or thoughts?
No, well, yeah, I guess I can.
Okay,
I
I
can
mean,
share it.
I'm
Yeah, sure.
open. I'm an
Sure.
open book.
I think that one thing that I've seen from other conferences that I really appreciate is I think that conferences bring a lot of people into a shared space,
Mhm.
but the majority of the people that are there are the most immediate surrounding communities, right? So I'm from Portland. We're in Austin. I'm not
Native.
from Austin,
yeah.
but a lot of the people I'm talking to here are here because they're around the area. And I think that brings a lot of the area in, but I like when conferences take time to get people out to experience the culture of that whatever the city
Oh,
is as well.
Okay.
So yeah, that was one thing that I thought
Be more of.
I would be more for. Yeah, I like it. But of course, that's just more
it's a resource
organizing
thing,
and
yeah.
stuff. And
So it's not an impossible thing.
yeah.
It's just. So that's interesting.
No,
I
it's
had
just
never
an
really thought about it down here.
yeah.
I'll explain why. So in Wisconsin, when we do our event, Wisconsin goes a little something like this. You land in an airport
Mhm.
or you're driving, and then it's cornfield, 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 gigantic water park resort town,
Yeah.
cornfield, cornfield. And so there's not really anything. I mean, there's some touristy kind of ham stuff you can kind of go look at,
Yeah.
but there's not really a culture per se because
Yeah.
it's a water park town. Like
Sure,
it's
sure.
literally nothing but water parks.
Yeah.
Whereas down here, there's certainly that thing,
Yeah,
those kind of
live
things you
music,
could go do. Yeah,
barbecue.
totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this isn't like a point against.
Oh yeah,
that
no, I'm
conference
not
or
taking it as a
anything.
dig. It's an
'Cause-
opportunity
Yeah,
to.
because also I'm experiencing things here that I haven't had an opportunity.
Sure.
Like we're in a fantastic resort with
Yeah.
an indoor water park and
Yeah,
an
yeah.
arcade and all that, and it's really cool. But I did find myself thinking like,
What else
uh,
could we do? I'm
yeah,
new.
like, well-
What could I go see?
yeah, well, yeah, like
Yeah.
we're in Austin. It's one of the coolest cities in the country, and yeah, just I don't know.
Yeah.
It's appreciation that other people do is not
Yeah.
necessarily
Yeah,
a dig. Yeah,
yeah, yeah. I mean, at the minimum, we should be adding like things to go see,
yeah,
and places. You know, I get asked where's a good barbecue joint, and
yeah. Because it's community. I wish that I don't know. There's people flying in and out, and some people come in and do their talk and take off. And I understand schedules, but I think because this community, that community is it's so focused on community. I like the idea of embracing not just the people that are here, but the location where we
Mhm.
are as well.
yeah, Yeah, absolutely. You've given me a lot to think about.
Forms.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I got to go fix my forms, and I need to figure out how to embrace culture better.
Yeah, but no, this is great. I've again, I can only be so grateful for the opportunity that you've extended and given me the chance to
Absolutely.
hang out and talk to people.
Yeah. Well, thanks for being on that podcast. I'm glad we got a chance to talk, and we'll put your newsletter in the notes below, and
Oh yeah, sure.
make sure people sign up for that.
Yeah, all right.
All right. Thank you,
Cool.
bud.
Yeah, thanks.
Appreciate it.